the recording. All right, y'all. So we're going to be covering session 11 today, which is focuses a lot on the negative path and the dynamics of the negative path and getting into the Orion group a bit. So interesting material, important to be balanced as we move through it, I believe. I'm going to go ahead and read the notes on the major topics and themes of session 11. So there's a question. It starts off with a question about inclusion of the ritual used to call Ra in the publication, and a question on the channeling group optimization and whether or not to add additional participants. There's a topic about the hypothetical Maldek evolutionary path, and then one question about an unknown sphere locked in first density on the other side of the sun, planetoid, perhaps. And then 4D negative graduation from 3D. How does that work? A bit about Adolf Hitler. And then 4D negative graduates from known Earth history, Taras, Bulba, Genghis Khan, and Rasputin, and the penetration of the 8th level. There's a topic about activity of the Orion crusaders, what they're up to, and a question about the formation of the social memory complex. And then there's a discussion about Orion influence on Earth, which leads into a discussion about nuclear energy and its mixed origins. And that leads into Nikola Tesla and his desire to free humanity from darkness. And then wanderers in the Industrial Revolution, a little bit of contact maintenance, and what is the Orion objective? So that's what we got. It's a 33, oh no, sorry, 33, I think it's 33 questions, so it's a bit long. We can just see how we do. We can split it into two if we need to. We can also breeze through it. Let's see how it goes. Anybody want to start us off with the reading? 1.0, or I'm sorry, 11.0?
I'll start.
Thanks.
Okay, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner, should we include the ritual that you have suggested that we use to call you in the book that will result from these sessions? I am Ra. This matter is of small importance, for our suggestion was made for the purpose of establishing contact through this instrument with this group. Questioner, is it of any assistance to the instrument to have name and name present during these sessions? Does the number in the group make any difference in these sessions? I am Ra. The most important of the entities are the questioner and the vibratory sound complex Jim. The two entities additional aid the instrument's comfort by energizing the instrument with their abilities to share the physical energy complex, which is a portion of your love vibration. Next topic.
I just have a small comment on that one. You know, it's interesting because you might think, you know, the more the merrier in terms of the doubling effect. You might think that the bigger the circle, you know, the circle of support for the group contacting Ra might strengthen the contact. But it seems like it's a balance between that and the harmony that Ra talked about so much that the three of them had. And I don't know if y'all have experienced it or not, but, you know, in groups, the bigger you know, even adding one person, the complexities of the relationships, and, you know, it is harder to have and hold harmony in a group with the more people you add. So I just found it interesting because it's a good question. You know, they're struggling, you know, they're still very early in the contact. You know, this is just, what is it? Probably it's less than 2 weeks, I think, after they started. So they're still getting their footing. And they're trying to just figure out the optimization of what's going to help this contact be sustainable. So I just thought that was interesting. That's it.
Okay.
How do you share physical energy complex?
Say it again, Sean.
Can you hear me?
It was a
Yeah.
little echoey, but yeah, say it again.
How do you share physical energy complex?
Yeah, so the end of 11.2.
Mhm.
I thought I took it to mean sort of like a energetic space holding, but I don't know if that's what it means. But like, but it seems to be related to love. So they love Carla in some way that supports her energy, which sounds to me like energetic space holding.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they're adding energy. Like they're successfully, because they love her, they're able to sort of send, visualize or somehow send energy that aids her physical complex, is what it sounds like, which is pretty cool.
Cool, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I got out of it also. I immediately pictured that between the three of them, especially because they've lived lives before together and they have a pre-incarnative plan for this, that in short, they're very comfortable with each other's energy. The love vibe that's being put out in their energetic toroidal field, their aura, they're comfortable with, they feel supported. It's very specific to the three of them. The second you throw in, it's like a recipe in stew. The second you throw in another flavor or ingredient, it changes it entirely. Sometimes they're more cohesive and it adds to the flavoring. Sometimes it can clash. And so that even without even knowing, there could be energetic sort of clashing or just lack of comfort. The tiniest little thing could shift their trio's vibe. So
Yep. Cool. All right, let's move on. 11.3, you want to keep reading, BJ?
Sure.
Great.
Questioner, you said yesterday that Maldek was destroyed due to warfare. If Maldek hadn't destroyed itself due to warfare, would it have become a planet that evolved with self-service? And would the entities have increased in density, gone on to say fourth, fifth density in the negative sense, or the sense of self-service? I am Ra. The planetary social memory complex Maldek had in common with your own sphere the situation of a mixture of energy direction. Thus, it, though unknown, would most probably have been a mixed harvest, a few moving to fourth density, a few moving towards fourth density in service to self, the great majority repeating third density. This is approximate due to the fact that parallel possibility-probability vortices cease when action occurs, and new probability-possibility vortices are begun. That's a whole topic. Maybe it continues. Yeah, I think we continue with Maldek after the sun.
Nope.
Okay.
That's it. That's it. Oh yeah, right. After the sun, the
11.5.
planet piece, right?
So maybe I'll finish with 11.6.
Okay.
Question: is there a planet behind our sun, opposite to us in orbit, that we do not know about? I am wrong. There is a sphere in the area opposite your sun of a very, very cold nature, but large enough to skew certain statistical figures. This sphere should not properly be called a planet, as it is locked in first density. Questioner: you said that entities from Maldek might go to, some may go to fourth density negative. Are there people who go out of our present third density to places in the universe and serve, which are fourth density self-service or negative type of planets? I am wrong. Your question is unclear. Please restate. Questioner: as our cycle ends and graduation occurs, is it possible for anyone to go from this third density to a fourth density planet that is self-service type or negative type? I am wrong. We grasp now the specificity of your query. In this harvest, the probability possibility vortex indicates an harvest, though small, of this type. That is correct.
Yeah. So it seems like Don just wasn't sure if he was asking if there was going to be, if it was possible to be negative graduates from Earth. And Ra seems to say that that's possible, but the harvest on that side looks a bit small. I think that's what they're saying there. Does that seem, is that however other people took it?
I didn't make a lot of sense of it. So
Okay, well, that's what I think. That's what I think those two questions are about. Don is saying, well, you know, is there going to be a negative harvest on Earth? And Ra says it's possible, although it will be small. If there, you know, if there is, it seems like it's going to be small harvest of negatives. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I was wondering about the action. Was that referring to when they actually blew up their planet? Was the action where new probability vortices occurred that weren't in their possible futures?
That's exactly what I think they're talking about. They're like, well, we can't know because the timeline split. And if their planet had gone on to a successful graduation, you know, it might have been mixed, but they don't know because that action took place and then the timeline split, and then we, you know, it's unknown what happened on the other timelines.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
The other thought that crossed my mind is, were they referring to the then I don't call it interference, but then the aid coming to transport them to different, you know, to Earth, for instance, to continue their second.
Yep. And then I think the question about the sun is a little bit, I mean, again, I'm no expert in astronomy, but Don's question is a bit strange. Is there a planet behind our sun? Well, maybe like at that moment when he was asking, but like, I don't know if he thought there might be like a planet locked in, you know, right in the opposite orbit of Earth so that we would never be able to see it. It seems like that's what he was asking. My guess is that Don had heard of, or, you know, got caught wind of a theory that there might be a hidden planet that we never know about because it's exactly locked in an orbit that's precisely the same as the Earth's. But that's certainly not true of any of the other planets that orbit the solar system. They're all in different orbital periods. So it seems like Ra answered in kind of the affirmative, but it just was a snapshot of like when Don asked that question is how I take it. So I don't think that there's like I don't think Ra, and again, this is just my opinion, I don't think Ra was saying in the affirmative, yes, there's a planetoid of a very, very cold nature that is always behind the sun from the Earth. I think they just kind of were answering like right now while you're asking it, yeah, there is a planetoid. And as I understand it, there's actually hundreds, if not thousands of planetoids at the very far edges of the heliopause, you know, the edge of our solar system that are like that. They're very, very cold. They're not as big as most planets, but some of them are pretty big. That's how I took that. Hi, Yuri. Good to see you. So we have read through 11.6. Shall we keep going? Any other questions about any of that? Let's keep going. 11.7. Who would like to read?
I'll read. (11.7). Questioner, can you tell us what happened to Adolf Hitler? I am Ra. The mind-body-spirit complex known as Adolf is at this time in an healing process in the middle astral planes of your spherical force field. This entity was greatly confused, and although aware of the circumstance of change in vibratory level associated with the cessation of the chemical body complex, nevertheless needed a great deal of care. Questioner, is there anyone in our history that is commonly known who went to a fourth density self-service or negative type planet who will get there? I am Ra. The number of entities thus harvested is small. However, a few have penetrated the 8th level, which is only available from the opening up of the 7th through the 6th. Penetration into the 8th or intelligent infinity level allows a mind-body-spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time-space during the cycle. Questioner. Are any of these people known in the history of our planet by name? I am Ra. We will mention a few. The one known as Taras Bulba, the one known as Genghis Khan, the one known as Rasputin. Questioner. How did they accomplish this? What was necessary for them to accomplish this? Ra. All of the aforementioned entities were aware, through memory, of Atlantean understandings having to do with the use of the various centers of mind-body-spirit complex energy influx in attaining the gateway to intelligent infinity. Questioner. Did this enable them to do what we refer to as magic, do paranormal things while they were incarnate here? I am Ra. This is correct. The first two entities mentioned made little use of these abilities consciously. However, they were bent single-mindedly upon service to self, sparing no efforts in personal discipline to double, redouble, and so empower this gateway. The third was a conscious adept and also spared no effort in the pursuit of service to self. Questioner, where are these three entities now? I am Ra. These entities are in the dimension known to you as fourth. Therefore, the space-time continua are not compatible. An approximation of the space-time locus of each would net no actual understanding. Each shows a fourth density planet which was dedicated to the pursuit of the understanding of the law of one through service to self. One in what you know as the Orion group, one in what you know as Cassiopeia, one in what you know as Southern Cross. However, these loci are not satisfactory. We do not have vocabulary for the geometric calculations necessary for transfer of this understanding to you. Question: who went to the Orion group? I am Ra, the one known as Genghis Khan. Questioner: what does he presently do there? What is his job or occupation? What does he do? Ra: I am Ra. This entity serves the creator in its own way. Questioner: is it possible for you to tell us precisely how he does this service? Ra: it is possible for us to speak to this query. However, we use any chance we may have to reiterate the basic understanding, learning that all beings serve the creator. The one you speak of as Genghis Khan at present is incarnate in a physical light body which has the work of disseminating material of thought control to those who are what you may call crusaders. He is, as you would term this entity, a shipping clerk. Questioner:
That's a good place to stop. Let's stop there.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott. That's great.
Genghis Khan is a shipping clerk.
Genghis Khan is an Orion shipping clerk
It
In a
sounds
light body.
in a light body, a physical light body.
light, physical. What did he say? A light physical body, though? They said
Physical light body.
physical light body. Mhm. How is a physical light body physical? Or what is a physical light body? Is there a difference between a physical light body and a light body?
I don't know.
This reminds me of the I don't know if how many of you are following along with The Secret of Light, but there's this whole confusion about, are we talking about lowercase light or uppercase light? Are we talking about physical light or metaphysical light? Are we talking everything is light according to The Secret of Light, and sort of also according to the law of one, I think, but just in different vibrations, basically. Like if it's in manifestation, if we're talking about manifestation, which is both space-time and time-space, all dimensions, I mean, all densities, it's part of manifestation. And it's all light. It's all light.
Yeah.
So
what I imagine physical refers to, but I could be completely wrong. But what I imagine is like physical seems to have the property of like not passing through, like if there's a physical cup and I have a physical hand, they don't pass through each other. So I imagine that has something to do with it, like rather than sort of being permeated. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's just a thought.
Well, one thing that I think we can kind of surmise about Genghis Khan and his situation is that it seems like he didn't go to 4.1. And when I say that, I mean like the subplanes of fourth density. So all the densities have subplanes and subplanes. Ra says that they're nested, like a fractal. And the subplanes are kind of like minor lessons. So in fourth density, the major lesson is the lesson of love, moving towards wisdom. And then there's kind of like 7 subplanes within fourth density. And in the beginning of fourth density, it's physical vehicles. They're not as dense. I'm sorry, they're not as gross and maybe as physical as third density bodies, but they're still physical. They're just, they have bodies in 4.1. And by the end of fourth density, Ra says that entities are beginning to, like, it's basically light bodies. They're not physical bodies anymore. And in fifth density, it's light. But Genghis Khan, that wasn't very long ago, graduated by using this this method of penetrating the eighth level, which we'll talk about, and then now has a light body, which seems to me, and again, I'm just trying to put 2 and 2 together. It seems like he did such a good job of, when he graduated, he launched into like 4.3 or 4.4 or something. Because if you graduate to another density, I think how it works is like you go to the subplane that's appropriate for your level of evolution. So it seems like he rocked it on the negative path. Scott?
I forget what my question was. Maybe it'll come to me. There were several questions in that reading, but something you had mentioned. I forget what it was now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read through it.
Okay. Sean?
I find it really interesting that in 1112, Ra basically says that space-time in fourth density is not compatible with space-time in third density, because I mean, we're in technically fourth density now, and space-time seems the same. I mean, I thought it would be gradual, or I don't know, like I figure, like, like I know in fourth density, like the big thing is like the bodies are configured so that like everyone can like basically read each other's mind, and there's no, like, you can't hide anything from everyone. But how would that make space-time incompatible? Like, maybe it's something about the light body. Like, maybe once you enter a light body, then physical space-time that we experience in bodies is no longer the same. It just, like, I understand that, like, especially like in the higher dimensions, like, especially I imagine like rock and space time travel anyways. So in that sense, like, there's no point in comparing their time with us, but already in fourth density, that surprises me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the higher densities can always like see and interact with the lower densities, but the lower densities can't see and interact with the higher densities unless the higher densities choose that. And yeah, it is a little confusing, but I think my response is that Earth is in very, very, very early fourth density, very early, right? It's going to be like, what, 30 million years long or something? And we're like 50 years in, 80 years in, something like that. Just, we're just barely in fourth density. And it feels like it's energetically available, like it's in potentiation, but it isn't yet manifested because the mind of Earth hasn't fully claimed it. Like, we haven't fully lived it. Like, we're not potentiating it through our seeking as a collective. Yeah. But it's a good point. You would think that, like, well, if Earth is in fourth density, but we're still in third, it seems like they're compatible. But I don't think fourth density is fully manifested or potentiated on Earth. And once it is, I don't think that they're compatible anymore.
I wonder if, like, in fourth density, like, civilizations basically discover time travel, and that changes how they interact with space and time. I don't know.
I want to say that this piece about the negative entities, and then also Ra's reminder of where was it? Oh yeah, 11:15. We use any chance we have to reiterate the basic understanding, learning that all beings serve the Creator. It reminds me of the reading that we did years ago with the study group, the Hidden Hand material, and I want to check that out again, because I remember it being really impactful in terms of that understanding of like negative entities aren't evil or something. Like, it's still love, it's still service, it's still helpful to all of creation, and they have that awareness, it seems. Anyway, it's a whole separate thing. It's not channeled by Ra or anything, but it's a really interesting thing that I want to check out again. Do you have a copy of it or a link for it?
Yeah.
Mel?
Yeah.
Maybe we could share it on the thread, or even do a special study.
Yeah, I think if we're
Perhaps.
going to share it, I want to be available to unpack it, because it's not light material.
Yeah.
It's important to I think it's important to discuss. If we're going to, if I was going to share it, I'd want to take responsibility for sharing it, because yeah. Yuri.
Yeah, hello. It will come later, but at one point, Russ says that Logos is serving to himself because he's creating and enjoying the creation, and he serving to himself. What do you think about this? Are there positive serving Logos and negative ones?
That's a really good question. It's deep to contemplate that. I definitely have contemplated that, and I could respond, but I want to open it up.
And then I think of that since there is one infinite creator, which is, and Logos, one Logos is a part of one infinite creator, then this separate Logos, they serve to one infinite creator, which means they serve to others. So it's really interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question in response, Yuri. What do you make of the difference between the one infinite creator and a Logos? What's the difference?
The one infinite creator is like all the Logos total, which are there in the space and time and space. So one infinite creator is something much more broader, if we may say so. And
Yep.
Logos is so one infinite creator, something which was there before first how you call it?
Distortion.
Distortion, right?
Yep.
So one infinite creator is someone who created first distortion, and then Logos is a second distortion.
Yep. Right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my response and then see if anybody else wants to add on. But to me, the essential quality of the Logos is taking a focus. So choosing out of the infinite possibility of the one infinite creator's infinite thought, choosing something, choosing a focus, choosing something that's not infinity. And at the broader scales, what's being chosen is still pretty broad. Like a galaxy can experience and can express all kinds of different life. And then a sun gets more specific, and then we, the sub-logoi of people, get very specific. But even at our level, we're still, we choose lots of ideas. We explore lots of things in our lives, but it's still a lot more specific than a whole solar Logos. So infinity, the infinite idea includes evil. I mean, it includes darkness. It includes self-service. It includes all sorts of things that, I think this is a really big part of the Law of One teachings that kind of goes, in my opinion, kind of goes beyond other religious treatments of good and evil, because evil in other systems, as far as I've seen it, is depicted as like other than God. It's depicted as like against God. It's depicted as like outside of the circle of what God would do. And that's just not true. God creates everything. The one infinite creator contains everything, including darkness, including what we think of as evil. And yeah. And so that's a lot to swallow. That's a lot to get comfortable with. It's a lot to contemplate. But yeah, I think that Ra says that our logos has a bias towards kindness. I don't know if there's logoi who, like at the galactic or solar level, are tilting towards non-kindness or service to self. I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's just those are my thoughts.
So you would understand words of Ra that our logos is serving to himself. So you think so?
The logos isn't an evolving entity. It hasn't separated from God. It hasn't separated from the one infinite creator. It's like, it's this really unique position in the creation where like the logos, as far as Ra, I think Ra talks about it, like the logos is a direct and pure expression of the one infinite creator. And it doesn't exactly evolve. It doesn't exactly like ever leave infinity. But it's,
I would disagree, because there was one logos has infinite quantity of how you call it? We have eight dimensions, dimensions, and then we have next how you call it?
octave.
Octave. So our logos was in previous octave, and he didn't give the freedom to choose to its creation. And now in this octave, we have freedom to choose.
Right.
And there will be something different in next octave.
Right.
So is it not the sign of evolving of the logos?
It's an excellent point, Yuri. And maybe it's semantics, the way that we are just putting words to our thoughts about it. But I think that when the galactic logos, completes its octave, to me it feels like it just like we do in seventh density, it completely dissolves its identity back into the creator. And in the new octave that's created, a new logos is spun up, and it's based on the learning of the previous logos, but I don't know if it has the same kind of like soul. I don't know if logoi have souls. We could debate about it. I think that we as mind body spirit complexes have souls, and souls reoccur from lifetime to lifetime, and that's how we evolve. I don't think logoi have souls. It might be true what you're saying, Yuri, that like our logos that now is extending free will to its third density entities, which the previous logos did not. Maybe it is another iteration of the previous logos. I think of it differently. I think of like logoi complete. When the seventh octave, when the seventh density completes, they just merge completely back into the one infinite creator. And then the one infinite creator has learned something, and then it creates a new octave and a new logos to choose a new idea based on what it's learned.
I perceived Ra as it is the same logo. It's the same, and I think Ra says that other logos, they went through the same track, not transferring free will to third and fourth and sixth density, and like its next step, and then when the harvest is happening, then the entities from next octave are coming to this octave to help us, not only us, but it seems to all dimensions to transfer to next one. And I think it's somehow interconnected. and I don't know. I feel if we have possibility to evolve, then the whole entire creation can have possibility to evolve. I mean, for me, it seems to be logic.
Yeah.
But the laws, how the evolvement is happening, is something we cannot understand, of course.
Yeah, I agree with you, Yuri, and it's a really good point. I think logoi do evolve in a way, or the universe evolves. I'm definitely not disagreeing with that. I think there's just a question of, do logoi have souls? That's kind of what it boils down to, right? Do they have something that persists when they complete their octave and come into a new octave? Is there some selfhood of a logos that persists in that transition? And it seems like that's where maybe you and I have slightly different takes on that. And I have no idea. You might be right. It's an interesting thought. Well, before I see two more hands up, before we move on, is there anybody else who wants to respond to that question?
Yeah. If I recall correctly, I think the concept of service to self and service to others only exists at the level of sub-logoi, in the sense of like beings, like people, or like people that live on planets. I don't think the concept of service to self and service to others exists at the level of stars and galaxies, because I don't think they are separate from the creator. I think Ra specifically says that, but I don't recall specifically. I think information at the level of stars and galaxies is shared instantly, and that like whatever they are literally at that level, it's not really comparable to the experiences that people have. They are literally just connected to they are part of the creator. They don't experience separation in the same way that we do. And the only reason service to self even existed is because in the early universe, one of the early stars that were experimenting with life experimented with a life form that couldn't remember that when the universe first started, all life that incarnated into people remembered that they were coming from God. And at some point, one of the stars experimented with a life form that didn't remember that. And that was the first instance of service to self. And I don't think I want to say there's a specific passage where Ra asks about service to self and service to others at the star level, or positive and negative at the level of the logos. And Ra basically says, yes, they exist, but it's not positive and negative exist, but not in the level that you think. It's not service to self or service to others. It's not that type of positive and negative polarity.
I have a question for Yuri about what you were bringing up. You said there was something later that you read that you're referring to. Do you mean later in this session, or just sometime later?
Sometimes later, some few sessions later, and he specifically asked about our logos, and he says, and Ra answers, yes, he's serving to himself by creating, creating this universe, so to say. And if we recall that the first distortion is a free will, then somehow different options can be possible, are available to the level of logos. But I think we cannot perceive their level of this serving to self and serving to others. And I cannot make an idea if the logos, our logos, is negative one, what can be the positive logos? I cannot make an idea for myself.
Yeah. Well, I would be interested to know what question, what passage you got that from. So maybe you could look into it and share it on the threads, because I think it's an interesting question. I would like to see that reference.
The very first time when I heard this, I was like, what? Our logos is negative? It was shocking for me.
Well, Shang addressed it, and I agree with what Shang said of like, my understanding is that there is no possibility of positive and negative logoi. And it's only possible to have negativity if there's a veil. I don't think logoi have a veil at all. I think they're completely they have access to source energy. They have access to infinite power and infinite information and infinite presence also. And so I don't think that there's a possibility of two paths at the logoic level. And I think Shang said the same thing.
I'll try to find if
Great.
I will be able.
Yeah. Scott?
Oh, the thought that came up for me and that questioning about what has soul and what doesn't was, what is the oversoul? As you know, the oversoul is a thing in our vocabulary. And it just caught my curiosity. Does anybody have any ideas of what the oversoul is? Because the way I think about it is that it's it's hard to put into words. Maybe it's where our individual souls are born or birthed, but I don't know if that makes sense. But I think of it as a higher consciousness that is a oneness kind of consciousness of the individual souls and differentiated. In the sense that related to the idea of a soul group. And there can be different soul groups. But I didn't know like how far up the hierarchy, that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still in the same inquiry that you guys were in. Like, how far up the hierarchy does soul go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So BJ put her hand up, and then Shang.
I don't have oversoul really in my vocabulary, but I'm curious if it seems like you're more familiar with that concept. Do you distinguish it from higher self?
Yeah. I think I would in this moment that you're asking me.
Yeah.
Because I think of self as
I don't
self,
know.
individuated thing, and soul as, I don't know.
Less individuated.
I was trying to find, I don't know how to post or upload photos here, but Alex Gray has this amazingly beautiful painting called Oversoul. And I wish I could.
I think you can click share screen.
Oh yeah,
which you
I
might
can
need
do
to
that,
get permission to do that.
I will try to do that, and I'll let somebody else speak.
I'll just cover it real quick. In 36, there's a lot of discussion. Session 36, there's a lot of discussion of the oversoul. And in 36.4, the question is, do I understand from this then that the higher self or oversoul may break down into numerous units if the experience is required to, what we would call simultaneously experience different types of catalyst and then oversee these experiences? So it seems like from that perspective, oversoul is being equated with the higher self of an entity. But more commonly, the oversoul is referred to sort of as the higher self of a social memory complex. So eventually, in the arc of evolution, in fourth density and beyond, when a planetary collective becomes aware of itself as an entity and becomes harmonious as an entity, it forms a sort of like higher self of the collective, which they refer to as an oversoul. So it's more commonly referred to as a sort of soul of a group of souls, a collective of souls. But it does get used every once in a while as synonymous with higher self.
You also said Shang had raised his hand.
Yeah, thanks for tracking that. Shang, did you want to?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered everything I was gonna say. I think I would also add, like, my understanding of a soul is that I think it's also something that's specific to the sub logoi. Like, it's something specific to, like, it's a mind body spirit complex, or mind body spirit, which is a repository of collections that has yet to join the creator. It's the collection of experiences that has been collected that at some point will be reunited with the creator, which makes me think I don't think stars have souls because they're already part of the creator. If the definition is like the collective persistent like energy and experiences that is being collected in the realm of physical experience. That's just my interpretation.
I'm 100% with you, Shang. That's exactly how I think of it. I think that's the distinction we were saying before in response to Yuri's question, of like, you know, being separate, you being sort of separate from the creator or not. And I think the distinction is sub logoi have souls, and everything above that do not. And that's how I think of it too. Yuri?
Yeah, I have a question regarding social memory complex. What do you think the entities which merge into social memory complex, do they keep their identity or they lose it totally?
I think it's a transcend and include. I think it's a both and. So I think entities are still able to have a sense of self once they become a part of a social memory complex. And there is also like a meta self that forms, like Ra can say either I or we. Like there's a dual nature to a social memory complex. There's a collective sense of self that is unified as an actual person, a planetary person. And it's not the planet though. It's not like Venus like became a person, because Ra left Venus, and there's still a social memory complex, right? There's still a collective somehow, even though they're not still on Venus. But they can still send souls into incarnations. Some of us here are from Ra. Some of us here are individuated souls who are still able to take bodies and take lifetimes. And we're still, you know, whoever that may apply to is still part of their collective. So, so social memory complexes still contain individuals that can still like travel independently from the social memory complex. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, but am I right that by at the end of the fourth density, in the beginning of the fifth density, then this separate entity can decide to split and go on themselves.
Correct. Yep, exactly. Some beings choose to do fifth density alone, and some beings choose to do it as a collective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Juicy.
All right, beauties. I'm loving it. And I really hate that I have to go. I don't hate it. I love that I have to go. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Okay, let's keep reading. Picking up at 11:16.
I can read. What do the crusaders do? I'm Ra. The crusaders move in their chariots to conquer planetary mind, body, spirit, social complexes before they reach the stage of achieving social memory. Questioner, at what stage does a planet achieve social memory? I'm Ra. A mind, body, spirit social complex becomes a social memory complex when its entire group of entities are of one orientation or seeking. The group memory lost to the individuals in the roots of the tree of mind, then become known to the social complex, thus creating a social memory complex. The advantages of this complex are the relative lack of distortion in understanding the social beingness and the relative lack of distortion in pursuing the direction of seeking. For all understanding, distortions are available to the entities of the society. Questioner, then we have crusaders from Orion come into this planet for mind control purposes. How did they do this? As all, they follow the law of one, observing free will. Contact is made with those who call. Then Those then upon the planetary sphere act much as you do to disseminate the attitudes and philosophy of their particular understanding of the law of one, which is service to self. These become the elite. Through these, the attempt begins to create a condition whereby the remainder of the planetary entities are enslaved by their own free will. Questioner, can you name any of the recipients of the Crusaders, that is, any names that may be known on the planet today? I am Ra. I am desirous of being in non-violation of the free will distortion. To name those involved in the future of your spacetime is to infringe. Thus, we withhold this information. We request your contemplation of the fruits of the actions of those entities whom you may observe enjoying the distortions towards power. In this way, you may discern for yourself this information. We shall not interfere with, shall we say, planetary game. It is not central to the harvest. Questioner, how do the Crusaders pass on their concepts to the incarnate individuals on Earth? I am Ra. There are two main ways, just as there are two main ways of, shall we say, polarizing towards service to others. There are those mind-body-spirit complexes upon your plane who do exercises and perform disciplines in order to seek contact with sources of information and power, leading to the opening of the gate to intelligent infinity. There are others whose vibratory complex is such that this gateway is opened and contact with total service to self with its primal distortion and manipulation of others is then afforded with little or no difficulty, no training, and no control. Questioner, what type of information is passed on from the Crusaders to these people? I'm Ra. The Orion group passes on information concerning the law of one with the orientation of service to self. This information can become technical, just as some in the Confederation, in attempts to aid this planet in service to others, have provided what you would call technical information. The technology provided by this group is in the form of various means of control or manipulation of others to serve the self. Questioner, do you mean then that some scientists receive technical information, shall we say, telepathically, that comes out then as usable gadgetry? I'm Ra. This is correct. However, very positively, as you would call this distortion, oriented so-called scientists have received information intended to unlock peaceful means of progress, which redounded unto the last echoes of potential destruction due to further reception of other scientists of a negative orientation distortion. Questioner, is this how we learned of nuclear energy? Was it mixed both positive and negative orientation? I am Ra. This is correct. The entities responsible for the gathering of the scientists were of a mixed orientation. The scientists were overwhelmingly positive in their orientation. The scientists who followed their work were of mixed orientation, including one extremely negative entity, as you would term it. Is this extremely negative entity still incarnate on Earth? I'm Ra. This is correct. Questioner, then I assume you can't name him and would ask where Nikola Tesla got his information. I'm Ra. The one known as Nikola received information from Confederation sources desirous of aiding this extremely, shall we say, angelically positive entity in bettering the existence of its fellow mind-body-spirit complexes. It is unfortunate, shall we say, that like many wanderers and the vibratory distortions of third density illusion cause this entity to become extremely distorted in its perceptions of its fellow mind-body-spirit complexes so that its mission was hindered and, in the result, perverted from its purposes. Questioner, how was Tesla's work supposed to benefit man on Earth, and what were its purposes? I'm Ra. The most desired purpose of the mind-body-spirit complex, Nikola, was the freeing of all planetary entities from darkness. Thus, it attempted to give to the planet the infinite energy of the planetary sphere for use in lighting and power. Questioner, by freeing the planetary entities from darkness, precisely what do you mean? I'm Ra. Most of this was lost. The core of the response was as follows. We spoke of freeing people from the darkness in a literal sense. Questioner, would this freeing from darkness be commensurate with the law of one, or does this have any real product? I'm Ra. The product of such a freeing would create two experiences. Firstly, the experience of no need to find the necessarily emolument for payment in your money for energy. Secondly, the leisure afforded by exemplifying the possibility and enhancing the probability of the freedom to then search for the self, for the beginning of seeking the law of one. Few there are working physically from daybreak to darkness, as you name them, upon your plane who can contemplate the law of one in a conscious fashion. Questioner, what about the Industrial Revolution in general? Was this planned in any way? I'm Ra. This will be the final question of the session. That is correct. Wanderers incarnated in several ways, as you may call them, in order to bring into existence the gradual freeing from the demands of the diurnal cycles and lack of freedom of leisure. Should I go ahead and finish?
Go ahead. Yeah, that sounds great.
Questioner, well, that was the last question, so I'll ask, as usual, if there's anything we can do to make this instrument more comfortable. I'm Ra, you are doing well. The most important thing is to carefully align the symbols. The adjustment made this particular time space will aid this instrument's physical complex in the distortion towards comfort. May we ask if you have any short questions, which we may resolve before closing the session? Questioner, I don't know if this is a short question or not, so we can save it till next time, but my only question is why the crusaders from Orion do this? What is their ultimate objective? This is probably too long to answer. I'm Ra. This is not too long to answer. To serve the self is to serve all. The service of the self, when seen in this perspective, requires an ever-expanding use of the energies of others for manipulation to the benefit of the self with distortion towards power. If there are further queries to more fully explicate this subject, we shall be with you again. Questioner, just was one thing I forgot. Is it possible to do another session late today? I'm Ra, it as well. Questioner, thank you. I'm Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one creator. Adonai.
Great. Thanks, Sean. There's a lot in there. So the floor is
They
open.
did do another session that day. Session 12 was the same day. It's amazing to reflect on that, like how in the beginning they were like boom, 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 and then towards
Yeah.
the end there were like months in between.
Well, in the first couple of months, she lost like 40 pounds. Carla lost like 40 pounds, I think. And she wasn't big to start with.
Yeah,
It took its toll doing 2 sessions a day.
yeah.
I was looking for who the negative guy was.
Me
in the
too.
Manhattan Project.
I searched and searched. I couldn't figure it out, but
I think I know. I have a suspicion.
Oppenheimer, was it, you think Oppenheimer?
No, Oppenheimer said he had regrets. I think it's a guy named Edward Teller,
Uh-huh.
who was like really pro nukes and really pushed for the use of nukes, and like even till the day he died was like nukes should be like the US should just keep building nukes. Like it's the key to peace.
Yeah. Right.
Like really, really controversial guy. A lot of controversial personal relationships. I don't know. It's just an educated guess. But
Yeah.
I remember like reading through his profile on Wikipedia and was like, this sounds like it could match.
Yeah. I honestly think taking a little time to understand the Manhattan Project and the development of nuclear weapons is it's a really helpful thing for seekers. I think it's like a microcosm of all the dynamics on Earth. Like you've got like strongly negative influences, you've got strongly positive influences, you've got like anyway, there's so many dynamics to be learned when you look at that. And you know, the way that it ushered in the modern age of the UFO contact, you know, like after the nuclear bomb went off, there was a flood of sightings of UFOs. Like UFOs like showed up in force on Earth and being like, okay, guys, we need to go help them because they might go the way of Maldek if we don't, you know, kind of thing. It's a big deal, the development of nuclear weapons, nuclear power. BJ?
Yeah. What I want to talk about is from 1125, talking about Nikola Tesla. He was an extremely angelically positive entity. And then they also said it's unfortunate that, like many wanderers, the vibratory distortions of third density illusion caused him to become extremely distorted in his perceptions of fellow mind-body-spirit complex, so that his mission was hindered and in the result perverted from its purposes. And to me, that's just such an interesting I don't know, clue or something, like in terms of, you know, I think most of us in the collective are really interested in how do we live the positive path well. And I think that's a really clear clue. like watch your distortions in your perceptions of fellow mind body spirit complexes. And to me it comes back to what you were saying, Shang, in your check-in. You know, how are we perceiving other beings, other entities on this planet, and how they're doing. And from my perspective, like, in one way, that's not really our business, you know, in order to evolve on the positive path. Our mission is to serve and to radiate our love, regardless of, you know, their status or their whatever, like whatever's going on with them. Yeah, and a lot of y'all know one of my main teachers is Byron Katie, and one of the things that I appreciate that she says is like, their job, you know, whoever they is, whoever our other selves are, their job is to trigger us, and our job is unconditional love. So yeah, I'm open to other people speaking on that too, but that's what that caught my attention.
Yeah. Do you take that to mean what Ross says there about Tesla, that he got jaded or he got bitter towards humanity?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he got bitter, and it also, they didn't say that, but it does sound like that. But it also sounds like perhaps the purpose got more focused on just the technology rather than the reason for the technology. I don't know if that's true, but that was my interpretation as well. It got more form, like focused on the form of electricity and technology rather than I'm doing this in order to support my other selves to seek the creator. Like it got watered down or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's just my interpretation.
Right. Well, I don't know if anyone knows the history of Tesla. It's he has a fascinating story, but a big event in his life was that he got funded to build his Wardenclyffe Tower, to build the tower that was the prototype of this free energy distribution system that he had invented. And I think it was JP Morgan or some big like mogul. And then once the funder figured out that this technology meant that they could no longer, profit from energy, they destroyed it. And that was a big blow to his, it was just really hard for him, I think, to deal with that and bounce back and feel willing to serve in the same way that he had before then.
Yeah, and it seems like that's, from what little I know, but that's the history of a lot of free energy devices. It's like suppress,
right?
Because we want to keep people working so that they don't have free time to use their creative energies.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a consciousness portion of the suppression, and then there's just a straight up profit motive of the suppression. And I'm really excited about this documentary. It's the 5th documentary that Stephen Greer has produced. It's coming in June, and it's called The Lost Century. And it's about this topic. It's about how all these free energy projects have been, diverted from the public. Lots of documentation of them. I'm sure Tesla is going to be, be in there too. But it's going to be. I've really enjoyed all of his documentaries. I think they're really well done, and it's coming out in not too long. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question related to what BJ said?
Mm-hmm.
In that same, where was it? 20. It was 25. Yeah.
25.
He says Tesla was angelically positive. Ra doesn't really talk about angels very much in Law of One, but like very few. I just did a search for if the word angel, and it appears like 9 times. And this is one of the few times. Like, what does it mean to be angelically positive? How's that different from regular positive? Like, why not just say extremely positive? Well, he does say extremely positive. Extremely angelically positive.
I guess it's possible that very uninformed response, but it seems like it's possible that they're using it colloquially, because we can say someone's angelic without meaning literal angel.
That's kind of how I take it too. It seems more colloquial than technical. Because I think they say angels are like, this gets back to that thing about souls and logoi and being a portion of the creator versus like being independent or something. I think they say that angels are like direct manifestations of the creator. They're not evolving entities. They come straight from the creator to do a thing, to do an action on behalf of the creator. So they're distinct from mind body spirit complexes. And I don't think Tesla was one of those. I think that Tesla was an evolving soul.
Are there any mentions in raw materials about angels, the direct manifestation of creator?
That's my memory, and I'm just going from memory. I didn't pull it up. Sean, you have it up. Does that comport with your understanding?
I don't remember.
Okay, I don't remember. That's my memory, Yuri. I don't have it up in front of me right now, but I think that they say just one time, only one time, they say, I think they say angels are like a special kind of entity that's created, like it's a direct manifestation.
Yeah, it is here. There are those directly under the guardians who are responsible for the incarnation patterns of those incarnating automatically, that is without conscious self-awareness or process of spiritual evolution. You may call these beings angelic if you prefer. Yeah, that matches what you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Amanda.
Scott, I'm curious if Scott had your hand raised. You put it down. You're complete.
I did put it down, and I did have it raised.
Okay.
I'm
Good.
tracking you, Scott. I was
Accurate
tracking you. I was just trying
reporting.
to see.
Well,
I didn't know if you had a new
sometimes-
topic, or I was just trying to like field direct responses to this question of Tesla.
Yeah, it was direct to that, and
Great. Let's do Scott and then Amanda.
because that part actually stood out to me. So that's one thing that I wanted to inquire about, but specifically, and through the conversation, most of it got touched on anyway, because I was going to bring up the fact that, like, yeah, he was under attack and all of that, and I think I heard that it was Thomas Edison that had a lot to do with that, because he was the owner of the the first electric company or something, and it was competition. So most of my questions and thoughts and stuff got answered through the conversation, which is why I put my hand down. So let me see if there's something else that was still remaining. I mean, my original thought was also inquiring into what did they mean by what were his distortions. And so I guess through that crisis, so to speak, that yeah, maybe he gave into like hatred and resentment to the individuals. I mean, maybe that's what I was thinking, like maybe because of that stuff that happened, not so much towards humanity as a whole. But I guess that's kind of related too. Maybe that was really, really distorted his perception of, or impacted his perception of humanity as a whole, because of these certain individuals who did certain things directly to him or to his work.
Yeah, that seems right.
Oh yeah, and then the other thought was further in the conversation. Like how do you? Oh, BJ, you were referencing Byron Katie and that how you quoted her, but the thought that came to me in relation to that was, I think it was in last week's session, which has stuck with me. It's either last week or the week before, which has been with me for like ever since we read it, which was to seek the creator in all things. And which I can imagine, I mean, it's hard for me because I've been really like presencing that in my internal dialogue. Like sometimes when I'm just sitting somewhere and I notice my mind go into judgment about people for whatever reason, because it has an automatic thing that it does that. And so I'm like trying to reprogram my mind to seek the creator in all things, but like some things are easier than others, right? I mean, there's some things I'll be like, but that, is something to contemplate and that seems to be like a mantra for me. I certainly won't claim to embody it at all times, but something that I'm working with.
It's so powerful. Those 4 exercises that Ra gave about contemplating, see the creator, are so powerful. And in my experience, it I don't know if this goes on for you, Scott, but it's like it really threatens the sense of, the sense of the ego. It really threatens the sense of being a person and being separate and being, unique. And once you start contemplating all beings as the creator, it starts to dissolve our sense of being separate. And it's like, at a certain level, like there's a part of me doesn't want that. I feel like, but oh no, well, I won't be able to be whatever. I mean, it's false, because you can be both. You can be individuated and unique and, be a evolving soul and still be united with it all. But that's what comes up for me in those exercises, is it threatens something that enjoys being separate.
Oh man, it's so interesting that you said that. And I'll just add this one part too, because this is what's been occurring to me. That exact thing is just like, oh no, but then like I have to let go of an identity,
Exactly.
right? An identity. But then I'm like, well, how do you do that? What if you don't have an identity? Well, I understand like just being in the state of pure awareness, because that's happened to me before, right? But if I was always in that state of pure awareness, my life would be really short, I think, because I wouldn't get anything done or something like that, So this is the thing, is just like, oh, so now it's like, because, then there's a conversation about kill the ego, right? What does that mean? So now I'm like, oh yeah, well, can I? No, more like a question. Can I seek the creator? And like, of course, there's nothing that's going to change my belief. Like it's all one, right? There's nothing that's going to change my belief, but I might be impacted at times to not be present to that. You know what I mean? Because then the engagement, and also the other thing that's occurred to me is just being addicted to the drama of the ego, to what do they call it in the Hindu tradition? Maya,
Yeah.
and just stuck in the world of Maya. But can we like embody these quirky personalities and all the quirks of our personality at the same time and just know that like I'm still, part of the all one? Yeah, I suppose. Anyways, that's my response.
Yeah. So rich. All right. Let's take BJ's comment and then let's move on and hear from Amanda.
Oh yeah, I forgot you were in the queue, Amanda.
I'm interested.
I could say so much about what's going on.
I was going to say, I bet BJ has a lot to say about this
I have
topic.
a lot to say about that. Okay, I'll just say a little thing. Okay, so one of my main practices is influenced at least by the work of Byron Katie and looking at the difference between with the thought and without the thought. And with the thought, I also sort of like think of as like the veil and the illusory self, and without the thought is more access to intelligent infinity or intelligent energy or just intelligence, the truth of who we are. And just in response to like looking at the resistance that we have, in those exercises, the truth of who we are welcomes the resistance. So that's something that I've been playing with lately, is like just loving the part of me that still wants to be separate and still wants to suffer. Because if we try to like make it go away, that's the ego fighting the ego. And so instead, like just playing with loving any part of me that still wants to suffer. So that's what I want to say.
Thanks, BJ. Okay, Amanda, what you got?
Okay, I'm gonna go back to 1125 again, and I just want some clarification. You all said that that term angelically positive was a colloquial, and does Ra do that a bit? This is my first time going through the material, so like, is Ra poetic at times?
They are. They do.
Really?
They get poetic, and they also get funny. They like make jokes sometimes, and their humor is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. My other thought was that, like, what if Tesla being so distorted was through the distorted perceptions, just saw the people that were service to self-oriented? What if he just couldn't imagine them being service to self-oriented and therefore trusted them too much? And the distortion happened to do with having too much trust, where it shouldn't have been.
Well, if that is the case, that I would guess that that's a very common experience for either wanderers, especially who've already, chosen the positive path and come with they just want to radiate, right? They just want to love. And it's easy to get tricked when you're in that state of mind on Earth, in a veiled, mixed polarity environment. It's really easy to get tricked.
Yeah, totally. Because you can't
I
imagine that
appreciate-
people have such such malintention. So
Totally.
you can't
Yeah.
see it even when it's in front of your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate that way of looking at it. That seems like it certainly could be true. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still
Aaron-
notice that kind of thing in myself. Like sometimes I'm like, wait, you said something that isn't true intentionally? Like 40 plus years in, I'm still like, what? People do that?
Aaron, that passage you pointed out about the angels, now that I looked at it, it specifically says angels are under the control of the guardians, which gives a little hint of who the guardians are. Like maybe those are like the biblical archangels or whatever, like the super high level angels that are overseeing human evolution.
Right. Like it could be Michael and Gabriel and Uriel and those. I mean, those might be the guardians. And I think that Jim uses, like the classical white magical tradition of the banishing ritual and some of those rituals, they call on the guardians. They call on those archangels. So maybe that's who they are. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting possibility. I had never considered that. What else? What else was interesting? What other part of what we read did it stuck out to folks?
Have you guys there's a book called Homo Sapiens by who was it? Homo Sapiens.
Harari.
No, not Homo Sapiens. Sapiens. A Brief History of Mankind.
Noel
And
Harari.
Yeah. Have you read it, Yuri?
Yes, I did.
And his thesis is like, we went through all this technology, but we were probably happier in our hunter-gatherer days. That's like a big theme that pops up in the book. It's like, hey, we have all these like imagined societal things, all this technology, but like we work all the time. Are we really better off than we were when we were hunter-gatherers? It just makes me think like it's a theme of like all the help that we get of like, hey, let's give these guys all this technology so they have free time. Oh, looks like they're worse off now. I don't know.
Yeah,
that just
I
came to
want to
mind.
comment
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead,
go
BJ.
ahead.
That's another, or that relates to a theme for me that comes up in inquiry a lot. Like, one of my teachers named Tom points to, we use thought complexes and thoughts like tools, thinking that they're going to lead to our happiness, and it's a similar thing. And there's a whole like unwinding of using the tools of limitation of our mind and our beliefs, and looking at like, okay, I was believing X, Y, and Z. Like I was believing this situation in my life is a problem because I think when I believe it's a problem, then it's going to help me solve the problem. But then often that's not actually the case. Then I just suffer about it being a problem and it stops me from solving the problem. And I'm addicted to it being a problem because I need to prove that it's a problem or whatever. But I think that's totally fascinating. We are like interested in more complexity because of what we think it's going to give us, and it can be really interesting and and helpful to look at. Like, what did I think it was going to give me, and is it actually doing it? Scott, do you want to talk about what you put in the chat?
In response to Aaron's question, if there's anything else that was like the question that caught your attention, and that did. And, I was wondering, were they hinting, maybe was Ra hinting at that it would be a good idea, or like, well, I'll read it. Few there are working physically from daybreak to darkness, as you name them, upon your plane, who can contemplate the law of one in a conscious fashion, like some level of dedication to contemplate, like devotion. And they're saying few there are. And also it was tied to, it seems, because it comes right after that conversation about, well, the way society is structured, which we have to work for money to do all the stuff and all the time that it takes up and all that. But anybody else have thoughts about that statement? BJ does.
Amanda, you go first, because I've been talking a lot.
It just, my thought about that when I read that was just how grateful I am that I have a life where I'm not working daybreak to darkness every day, and am sitting here contemplating the law of one. And it feels like, wow, that's awesome. That's awesome that it sort of is like subverted the Orion trap, and I'm able to just hang out and contemplate with you all. And it just, yeah, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good comment, Sean. Something that I noticed about that is that, like, in the social enterprise arena, like people who are trying to like use business to better the world, a lot of like, as that sort of category of way of thinking was arising as I was watching it, because my parents are really involved in that. A lot of what social enterprises were interested in was bringing light to, what we call third world countries, like people who are out working daybreak to darkness, and when they get back to wherever they're living, a hut or a like cramped whatever, like the only, for a lot of people around the world, the only light was like dirty oil lanterns that was like expensive to use and couldn't was creating pollution and couldn't be burned for very long while they were inside and all this stuff. And just super fascinating to watch, like so many people being interested in bringing physical light to people around the world for the betterment of their lives. And then also, like, I think it sounds so amazing and beautiful, and like, wow, yeah, I think I might like to have light in wherever I was living. And then also I'm curious about, would that actually serve them, in terms of like developing what we could call underdeveloped nations. Like, is that actually helpful in the end? And from my perspective, I might think that wouldn't actually be helpful, but then if that is serving an individual, would that serve them if it wouldn't actually serve the long-term evolution of a whole people, a country or a culture? That's just an interesting question. Like, I want to help this one person and that I'm serving them, but then it may, I don't know, derail a whole culture. But I don't know if that's true. Just an interesting question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's such a big theme in the whole arc of the Law of One. Talks about lots of examples of how positive entities had a program for serving others that didn't go the way they thought it would. It happens over and over again. And to bring it really personal, this whole theme to my own, experience of life, like Bija and I, have a son. Our son is about to turn 15. you know, and we both like are so devoted to him. We love him so much.
16.
Sorry, 16. But it's a question for me about whether or not how much we do for him is actually helping his spiritual evolution or not. You know, it's like when you love a child, you want them to not suffer, of course, and you want to do whatever you can to help them not suffer. But what is the proper role of suffering for evolution? You know, it's like if you try to take away all the suffering of an entity, like, is it actually helpful? And it's such an, you know, it just gets more and more subtle and fine to like be with that question. And, you know, I mean, I think if I was to take an honest assessment of my own choices and as a parent, I think I've probably, you know, been imbalanced with it and like taken away too much suffering and like done too much for him. He might be a little bit too supported and pampered, but I don't know, like you want to go with your heart when you're a parent. You want to just do everything you can, but it feels like it relates to like, you know, Tesla's desire to bring, you know, light to the world and lessen the darkness, and the Confederation entities' desire to, I mean, my understanding is they sent waves of wanderers with technology. Like basically, like the Industrial Revolution, Confederation entities sent like all these souls into Earth to bring inventions that would just make it so people didn't have to toil so much, so that they'd have more leisure time, so that they could like contemplate spiritual teachings. But then like we don't, you know, like we just use the leisure to like find comfort and to like please our body's desires and whatever. It's such a mystery. How do you know what's going to land as service and what's not?
Now we're enslaved by those technologies, many of them. Cell phones, whatever, television.
Surely it must have helped somewhere, right? Like surely some other planets benefited, which is why they thought it would work here, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
and like,
I think a lot of what we struggle with on this planet is just how mixed it is, you know, that and then there's a lot of suffering that we want to just avoid and distract ourselves from. So it's like, turn on Netflix.
yeah. I have such a deep, like, what I see about myself. One of my biggest emotional experiences is like feeling my own yearning for fourth density to be here. Like I yearn so much for heaven on earth to be just to be here. And I see it in small ways and I sense it is very close, you know, but it's obviously not yet here. Like there's still so much confusion and suffering. And a lot of my earlier part of my life, I thought that if we just had the technology of free energy, or if we just had the teachings of oneness, or, you know, if we just had whatever the thing, that all of humanity would just take it and use it to make heaven on earth. But that's not it. That's, you know, there's a choice. That's the whole point of third density, is there's a choice to be made. And so it seems the vast majority of souls on earth haven't made that choice. So we just have to roll with the mixed polarity.
I think a great number of people on the planet don't know that that's the choice. You know what I mean? Like the information hasn't been brought to them. I mean, maybe choosing just automatically, but like in the bigger picture of knowing what you're choosing or choosing something consciously.
Yep. Any final thoughts or comments before we end our call today? We're almost
I'm
at
so happy that
5.
it's raining. It might not be raining where you are, but it's raining here. We just did some gardening and now it's all getting watered. So that's my comment.
It's not raining here, 10 minutes away. But maybe in a minute will be.
Yeah, probably.
It's not raining here yet. About 10 minutes away.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. That was a really enjoyable session. Yuri, I'm glad you're back. We missed you.
Thank you. I was missing you too.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mwah.